China has warned the United States against imposing its democratic ideals on other countries. It says such a move will only create divisions and undermine stability. The remarks follow President Joe Biden's address to Congress marking 100 days in office. He told the joint session that the U.S. is in competition with China to win the 21st century.
In my discussion with President Xi, I told him, we welcome the competition. We're not looking for conflict. But I made absolutely clear that we will defend America's interest across the board. I also told President Xi that we'll maintain a strong military presence in the Indo-Pacific, just as we do with NATO and Europe. Not to start a conflict, but to prevent one.
China's defense ministry has also chimed in. It says the frequency of U.S. warships entering Chinese maritime territory has increased 20% since Joe Biden took office. President Biden's tough stance on China has been there since day one. Lo Min with this report.
The scholars I dealt with at Penn.
In his first news conference since taking office, President Joe Biden vowed to check China's growing ambitions.
But they have an overall goal to become the leading country in the world, the wealthiest country in the world, and the most powerful country in the world. That's not going to happen on my watch.
He also made clear that the U.S. will continue to call out Beijing in an unrelenting way on human rights violations. And over the last 3 months, his team has labeled China's treatment of Muslim Uyghurs a genocide, imposed sanctions on Chinese officials for overhauling Hong Kong's electoral system, upgraded U.S.-Taiwan relations in defiance of the One China policy, and proposed a sweeping 280-page Strategic Competition Act, spelling out how the U.S. plans to meet China's challenge in every dimension of power.
If U.S. Congress eventually passes this law, it will be the most comprehensive and most significant policy document on the part of the U.S. for the purpose of competing with China and even containing China.
The main difference between Biden and Trump is instead of going at it alone, the current White House occupant is courting allies to work together to counter Beijing. For his first leadership summit, he chose to meet virtually with leaders of the Quad, Japan, India, and Australia, to discuss ways to counter China's coercion in the Indo-Pacific. He also authorized freedom of navigation patrols in the South China Sea just days after taking office, angering Beijing. The hardline stance means the space for cooperation is narrowing to a limited set of issues of mutual concern, such as climate change, nuclear non-proliferation, and public health.
Neither side was coming to the table prepared to really start negotiating. It was really a laying out of positions, and in some cases rather maximalist positions. As a result, there's very little common ground right now for the two countries to explore areas for cooperation. It's really quite limited. So as a result, I think we're going to see a very static relationship.
On the economic front, for example, the Biden team has signaled that they're unlikely to lift tariffs imposed by the Trump administration anytime soon. And though Mr. Biden has proposed an in-person meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin in the coming months, Mr. Xi has received no such invitation. Still, experts are hopeful that the need to revive the post-pandemic global economy might be the one push that could bring the two superpowers together to restart trade negotiations in the coming months.
For more, we're joined now by Professor Arthur Dong. He's with the McDonough School of Business at Georgetown University. Professor Dong, President Biden taking aim at China in his first speech to Congress. Do you expect him to maintain this tough stance?
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me join. Yes, absolutely. The executive office, the legacy view on China, that China is an economic and strategic competitor to the United States, well, that view is going to continue to persist under the Biden administration. And I think the clearest evidence that this is going to be a persistent view is that Trade Promotion Authority has not been renewed. This is a necessary precondition to activate any potential trade action or trade negotiation. And this is coming, it's expiring in June. And the Biden administration has not asserted any sort of desire to renew this, which means this is going to be a long and drawn out, a set of circumstances.
Well, Professor, President Biden has warned the U.S. that China is closing in fast. How can the U.S. Keep ahead in terms of development and trade?
Yes, Steve, I think that's a great question, and certainly articulated yesterday in the president's State of the Union address. He's going to lay out a broad set of policies that focuses on domestic policy and domestic growth. It is, in a sense, to use a phrase, it's the rebuilding of America, and that nation building begins at home. So across two broad domains, first, Biden is going to want to achieve full employment. And the only way he can do that is to get a hold on COVID. He seems to be doing a very, very good job at that. And then the next big initiative is pushing through a massive infrastructure bill to promote the rebuilding and revitalization of America's creaky infrastructure. Following that, a focus on social infrastructure as well. And so these things in combination with climate change and energy transition are going to be the key drivers that revitalizes and pushes the U.S. economy forward in the years to come. But also keep in mind that technology policy will be at the front and center of any discussion about the renewal of the United States economy. And for sure, next generation technologies such as AI, cloud computing, biotechnology, microchips and microelectronics, all of these are going to come under the control and serious scrutiny of the executive branch, and certainly the ability for the White House to impose export controls of all of these technologies to China are going to be at the very forefront of the Biden initiative.
At the same time, Professor Dong, Joe Biden's also pledged to maintain a strong military presence in the Asia-Pacific. But that's a key sticking point for Beijing, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And as indicated in the segment that just aired, prior to my arrival on the scene here, the United States is not going to go it alone. As correctly articulated by your reporter, there's going to be a great focus on its allies, reinforcing the boundaries and bounds that connect the United States to its allies in the Asia-Pacific region, the Quad member nations, which is India, Australia, Japan, and including South Korea and Taiwan, as well as ASEAN member nations. Freedom of navigation is going to be a priority for the United States, and this is certainly drawing into direct conflict some of the interests that have been articulated, longstanding interests that China asserts over this very, very important body of water.
And given the conflict points between the U.S. and China, does Joe Biden look to want to rebuild ties with China while also standing firm?
Well, I think President Biden is a president who's going to use a different style and a different approach. Whereas President Trump oftentimes shot from the hip using explosive language as well as provocative language, you will not see that emanating from the current president. So President Biden, his stylistic approach is different. He will be much more reserved and moderated in the type of language that he uses. But make one thing clear, President Biden will be very clear on those matters that are of great priority and interest to the United States, and articulate his dissatisfaction with a number of policies being promoted by China, and make it very clear across all domains where the United States wants to draw a line in the sand. Now, there are areas of potential cooperation, and perhaps that is going to be in the area of climate change.
All right, many thanks for your thoughts this evening. Professor Arthur Dong from Georgetown University.